Welcome to My Life. I'm John Ochins, and I'm sitting here with Oxford resident Matt Smith. Matt has lived in Oxford for 10 years. He's originally from Tawas, Michigan. He's a licensed funeral director, an embalmer, and restorative artist. He's owned MS Funeral Service since 1999. He manages Professional Embalmers Institute. He owns Homeward Bound Shipping and has since 2016, among other companies. He's given seminars around the world. Last January, he was summoned to Tobago and Trinidad for the second time. The request came from the wife of the 86-year-old deceased former president, and her requirements to Matt were, number 1, no closed casket, number 2, make him look 20 years younger, and number 3, smiling. And when the wife asked to meet him after viewing the body, Matthew said the room was completely silent. He stood out like a sore thumb because he's 6'4", bald and white. But after a moment of silence, she hugged him and he got a huge ovation from friends and family. So all's well that ends well, I guess.
Yeah.
Welcome, Matt. It's really good to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I sure appreciate it.
You know, we normally have old people on this show.
Oh, I'm old.
And the reason for that is because I like to have at least one thing in common with my guest.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm glad that you're aboard. You've done some really interesting things here. And I first noticed you in the article that C.J. Carnaccio wrote in the Oxford Leader a few months ago, and it's just fascinating what you've been involved with here. I'd like to start talking about what you're doing right now, and you're doing a heck of a lot. I believe that you give seminars.
I do, yes.
Do you have anything coming up very soon?
Yeah, actually, it's seminar related. I have a institute. It's called Professional Embalmers Institute, and I opened that up. Let's see, we're working on our second year, and we hold that down in South Carolina. And I have a couple people that work for me that help put this together, because obviously I can't do this all on my own. But we go down to South Carolina. We bring postgraduate embalmers in to the program, and we max it out at 20 students, and it's a 2-day program, and that's coming up in May 22nd and 23rd. So it's coming up real soon.
Do you find yourself traveling far away from home for a lot of things lately?
It has its ups and downs. I do travel quite a bit, domestically, but I do, get offshore a little bit too.
Okay.
So yeah, I am traveling a lot.
I'm going to throw a couple of things at you that I know you're involved in right now, and maybe you can enlighten us on them, okay?
Sure.
Open casket podcasts.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the company that one of the companies that I work for, this one I don't own, is based out of Chicago. It's called Frigid Fluid, and because of my involvement in funeral service on a national level, I'm in the face of a lot of funeral directors, and Frigid thought, maybe we should do a podcast, something that embalmers can listen to while they're working. And when I say working, I mean embalming in the prep room, or driving to work. Something that they can relate to. We're the first actual funeral podcast to be developed, and so that's basically what it is. And so we've already recorded our 6th episode, and we plan on doing probably 6 more before the end of the year. And hopefully our goal is to do 1 a week, but we're starting out with 1 a month.
Okay, now, who is your audience for a podcast like that?
Well, podcasts are open to anybody.
Right.
So anybody could tune into it.
Who are you targeting?
But our target is definitely funeral directors. Funeral directors, embalmers, cemeterians, and those that are involved in funeral service.
And the Frigid Fluid Company, do they make a product that embalmers purchase, or what exactly are they involved in?
Yeah, Frigid is they've been around since 1892.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's an old company. And we are have you ever been to a funeral? Or even on TV, watch TV, where the casket's lowered down and it slowly lowers into the grave?
Yes.
Yeah, Frigid is an inventor of that.
Really?
And we're the global leader in sales of the casket lowering device. But in addition to that, Frigid sells embalming fluid. We manufacture and mix our own embalming fluid right on site in our factory, and we just distribute from Chicago.
I see.
Yeah, all over the world.
Morbid.com.
Isn't that a funny name? It kind of fits, doesn't it?
It's kind of like we're making a movie here or something. I don't know.
It's not a joke.
What is Morbid.com?
Morbid is kind of a brainchild of myself and my brother. Actually, we years ago we were, we were always into sales and always trying to help funeral directors get what they need. And we decided let's come up with something that funeral directors can trade. It was kind of off the coattails of like an eBay, but we wanted it to be mortuary related, and we were just brainstorming all these different names, and I thought it's going to be an auction site. Morbid, how about that? MOR-BID, and so we wanted to make this site like a bidding site, so other funeral directors could bid on used equipment. And we wanted, of course, the bids to get higher because, of course, we were compensated on the higher the bid, the more we received as an e-commerce, business. And Morbid really stuck, and it was appropriate because we're dealing with the funeral industry.
Yeah, well, it sticks in your mind.
Yeah, and so it's Morbid has evolved from an auction site. We were the auction gateway to funeral service, and it evolved from that into just straight retail. We have a classified section, and so
This is for various items that funeral directors use. Is that what it would be?
oh yeah, from you've probably seen or on TV or been a part of, where the funeral director will come in with a cot, place the decedent on the cot, and then carry the cot to the vehicle. Well, inside the vehicle, there's bed ramps, so we have those special equipment that we provide to the funeral directors, the cots, embalming tables, embalming machines, anything you could think of from cemetery related to funeral related, we have it. And we just provide the funeral industry with
Okay,
product.
so I've got this old silver flower hook that's probably that high and vintage 1880
Excellent.
that comes from a funeral home in Ida, Michigan.
Oh,
What do
yeah.
you think we could get for that?
Maybe a handshake. No,
Yeah,
no,
you're probably right. I was afraid you were going to say
no,
that.
there are actual museums that are hungry for these things. They really are. So if you're really serious about it, we'll talk later.
Yeah,
We'll get you lined up.
I'll let you know.
We'll get you lined up.
What I like to do is, once we've kind of ironed out what you're involved in now. Actually, let's talk a little bit more about that. What you're doing locally here in Oxford.
Well, locally, most of my business is not here in Oxford.
Okay.
Actually, none of it is. I just live here in Oxford.
Well, that's right. You do have an office in Lake Orion, I believe, right
I do.
now?
Yeah, I have an office in Lake Orion, and I run Homeward Bound Shipping, which is an international shipping and repatriation company. Basically, what that means is when mom or grandma or grandpa or whomever dies away from home, funeral directors here locally, or anywhere locally, when they receive the death call, and if their loved one died away from home, that local funeral director, wherever it is in the country or the world for that matter, contacts Homeward Bound Shipping. We have a network of funeral directors that we use, and we contact our agent, so to speak.
Can I pause you right there?
Please, yeah.
We need to take a break, but I want to delve into that a little bit more when we come back. So don't go away. Matt Smith is with us.
Excellent.
Here with Oxford resident Matt Smith. We were just talking about one of the companies he's involved with called Homeward Bound Shipping.
Yes.
And you were beginning to describe to me exactly what that company is all about and what its specialty is. Why don't we delve into that a little bit farther?
Yeah, sure. So basically what it is, it's a repatriation company or a shipping company, and to kind of break it down a little bit so it's easier to understand, when someone dies away from home, they need to be brought back home, and it can be a little bit confusing for the family members. Of course, you've got the grieving and the emotion that's attached to it, but
Especially if they die in another country or something like that.
when that happens, or on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
But then you have the logistics behind it. How do we get Grandma home? How do we get her back? And that's where Homeward Bound comes in. The local funeral director that has received the death call contacts Homeward Bound, and we have a network of funeral professionals around the country in different parts of the world. We contact them, and they respond to the call. And so, take for instance, if Grandma dies in Naples, Florida, we'll contact our agent in Naples, Florida. They will respond to the death call, whether it be a house call where the person died at home, or a facility, or a medical examiner's office. They'll respond to the call, they'll make the transfer, they'll take the custody of the remains into their care. They'll prepare the body by either embalming or cremation. In this case, we're talking about bringing the loved one back home, so they would embalm the body, they would prepare all the documents for the death certificate, all the permits, secure all those, and then place the individual in some sort of suitable container approved for, TSA approved for air flight. Now, we've transferred bodies through air, train, and vehicle, so we can do. The only thing we haven't done yet is the old English style on the shoulders yet.
Well, I'm sure that, as long as you're within our own country and in a good part of the Western world, you've got some laws that probably dictate what has to be done to human remains before you ship it someplace. What if you're dealing with a situation where somebody dies abroad? How do you do that? I mean, you have your network, but does it extend anywhere on the other side of the planet?
It does.
Oh, really?
It does. We've transferred human remains as far across as China, and of course Mexico, Canada, and Southern America, Australia. So we have to deal with the different consulates of each country here that's positioned themselves here in the States. So
Right.
we deal with them. We have a translator for whatever language is needed, because each country is going to require certain paperwork and certain documents in order for the remains to come back into their, back home to their country.
Sure.
So we translate all the paperwork that's necessary. The embalming report is one of those documents. The death certificate is another one of those documents. Basically, they want to know the cause of death. Why did this person die? And what are you bringing back into our country? They just want to make sure it's safe and appropriate. And they have all their documents in line before they accept the remains in.
How long have you been involved with that company so far?
I opened that company October of 2016, so not too long.
What inspired you to open that company?
I've had that question asked to me before, because it seems like a big undertaking, pardon the pun.
No pun intended, right?
Because of my involvement on a national level with these funeral homes and an international level with all my seminars and my training on embalming, I've developed a real strong core of some personal friends, real good personal and professional relationships. And so I've had the opportunity to build these relationships and create a real network. And I thought, with my connections, why don't I use what I have already to the potential and set up this network? And we know that people die away from home. We already know that. People go on vacation, they have summer homes, or especially here in the Midwest, you have the snowbirds that go to Florida, Arizona, and the South. So we already know that people die away from home, whether it be natural or tragic. And with my connections with these different professionals through my seminars, these are the people I can talk to and get to know, and those are my agents. So when someone dies, I contact them, and they arrange to bring the body back.
Yeah, and that seems like such a horrific situation, especially if somebody's just on vacation.
Oh, it's
and
terrible.
they're in a town that they don't live in, don't have any relatives in, don't know anybody in,
Very
and all of a
scary.
sudden you've got a husband or a wife who has to deal with, or maybe not even close by. Maybe they've got a child back in another state who has to deal with all this stuff.
Yeah, it can be very, very consuming. Here's what if someone is involved with that, because we're all going to face death. Someone's going to die, or we're going to die. We're all going to face it on one side or the other, and most of us on both.
Mm-hmm.
If that does happen, the best advice to give is to contact your local funeral home. Doesn't matter if you're out of state. Contact the funeral home in your hometown.
Because they know the ropes.
They know the ropes, they know who to call, and you don't want too many funeral directors involved. The fewer the better. And if your local funeral home knows, they can kind of take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and they can coordinate everything from that point.
Mm-hmm.
And you've basically got, one person in charge.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Are there very many companies who do what you do?
There are two major companies that do what I do, and they were my inspiration.
Sure.
Actually, yeah.
And I would guess that your company comes into play in the more difficult situations, the more complicated situations.
It does. It's kind of morphed into an everyday death. So just whenever the death happens, we take the call.
Yeah.
And of course, for massive trauma cases and restoration, I do get a lot of those calls because I do travel around teaching the restorative art thing. So I've kind of built up my name as the restorative art guy. And so yeah, when there is tragedy, there are a lot of funeral directors that think of me and they'll call me either for advice or what to do. And it might be just, hey Matt, I've got this situation, guide me through it, and I'll guide them through it over the phone and consult with them that way. Or I'll actually just handle the call and take care of it for them.
Let's turn back the clock a little bit. Now, you are originally from Tawas City?
Well, if you want to turn the clock all the way back to the first day,
Yeah.
yes, I'm originally from Tawas, and that was where my parents lived. But shortly after my birth, I think maybe I was 2, we took a 14-mile hike north on US 23, stayed on Lake Huron, and went to this little town called Oscoda.
Ah.
Yeah.
Now, what did your father do in that area?
He started out as just kind of a repair guy, and doing that. But as I knew him, from my life growing up, he was the photographer of in the town and in several towns. He was kind of the guy. He was the guy behind the camera. He took all the senior portraits and he put together all the composites for all the high schools in northern Michigan. He did several menus for the restaurants around, and he worked with the police, local police, and I think even the state police, where he would be the photographer of the crime scenes.
So he knew everybody up there.
Oh, he was a pillar. Yeah, oh yeah.
There
wasn't
probably
any. Yeah.
traveled around Upper Michigan. I mean, if he was photographing in schools and things like that.
Yeah, he took care of the schools, and from that point, he did their weddings, and after that, he did their family portraits when babies came along. He did it all.
Okay.
Yeah, his name was John Smith, so it's kind of
John Smith.
hard to forget
Very
that one.
complicated. Yes. All right, listen, we got to take a little break
Sure.
again, but we will be right back. Don't go away.
Catch us anytime on YouTube. Go to Oxford Community Television YouTube.
Back with Matt Smith on My Life. We were just talking about your early years. Your father, by the way, we extend our deepest sympathy. He passed away last March, didn't he? Sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'm sure there are a lot of people in northern Michigan who remember him quite fondly, being a photographer who was very involved in the schools and businesses and restaurants and all kinds of things up there.
Yeah.
Did you have grandparents who lived up there as well?
On my mother's side, I
You did?
Yeah, I did. My grandmother and her husband. I never knew my mother's father. He passed before I was ever born, when my mother was about 17 or 18 years old. So I never had the opportunity to meet him.
Did you ever do any search of your family history to find out what generation was the first to set foot here?
I listened to your program, and I've heard that question, and I thought it made me think about it. but I never really put a lot of effort into seeing who was the first. But
With a name like Smith, you'd have an awful lot to go through, I would think. I mean, seriously.
yeah,
You could go back to the Mayflower, maybe.
probably
or
so.
before, yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably end up doing that.
Yeah.
If we ever had an opportunity to come back,
We'll have-
if I have that
okay.
chance, I'll have that for you.
All right. Did your mother work outside the home?
She helped run the photography studio with my father. So when she did work, she worked for my dad. They ran the company together. And it was great because she, of course, owning the company, she could always be home, for us when we were home from school. So she was able to do that.
Did he have a separate office up there?
Oh, he had a photography studio. He
No,
had
a regular studio.
3 of them, yeah.
Where? Oh, he did 3 of them. So
Yeah.
he had like a chain.
Yeah, he did. They ended up ultimately in divorce, which broke our family up, quite severely. He moved to Tennessee, but before that, he had, 3 studios and was hiring staff, and he was really building. And as a kid, I couldn't wait to be a photographer.
Really?
Yeah, because that's what I was going to do. I helped him do the composites of these senior pictures, and we had a dark room in our basement. And I would be in the dark room, and we would be putting the prints in, and you got the 3 baths there, and we would hang the pictures up, and he would edit them with the big. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
As I think back on those, I think what years we're talking about here, that was the time up there around Oscoda where they closed down the Air Force Base, and
Yeah.
there was some economic stuff going on that wasn't too pretty. Did that affect his business at all?
It would have if he was still there at the time. That was in July of 1992 that the airbase, Wurtsmith Air Force Base, closed. And that would have been, I would have been 19. And so my parents divorced back when I was about 11 years old. So he had already moved to Tennessee
I see.
before the base had even closed or
Did
even
he
considered closing.
continue the photography business down there?
He didn't. He didn't because he blamed that for the
He did.
divorce. Yeah. So
How
he-
did that change your life in Oscoda?
Drastically. It changed it drastically. I went from having, I grew up in a house where Christmases were piles and piles of gifts high, that reached other rooms. And because money was good for my family. We lived in a big home and didn't have those worries. Of course, as a kid, you don't even really realize what those worries are.
Sure.
But looking back and seeing the pictures, we had elaborate Christmases, and we just went wherever we wanted to go. I always remember taking trips, and we just went.
Sure.
And that immediately was cut off. The divorce happened, the stream of income, as an adult now I understand what happened. That was cut off. We moved from house to house renting, and it was brutal.
Now you have one sibling, is that correct?
2.
2?
I have a brother and a sister.
Brother and a sister. So
Yeah.
there was 3 of you
3 of
and your
us.
mother.
And I was the baby.
Ah.
Yeah, I have a sister, Rhonda and John, and my sister's about 5.5 years older than I am. My brother, 3.5 years older than me.
What did your mother end up doing for a living up there?
She continued the photography
Oh, she did?
business with her new partner, which was one of my father's employees, and they, of course, John Smith Studio had to be, closed down and sold, and I don't know how they do it with divorce, liquidate it, and they opened up a new name, a studio in the same building, and it was a part of the divorce, and they continued the business, but it didn't have my dad, and the the engine behind that machine really was my dad.
Yeah.
And John Smith Studio was gone, and so went the business.
Where'd you go to grade school up there? I know this is backing it up a little bit.
No,
But,
Oscoda had 3 elementary schools, so it was big, a lot of kids. I first started out at Cedar Lake Elementary School. That was my first day. I'll never forget it. I can still remember my mother walking me into first day of kindergarten. Yeah, Cedar Lake. And then from there, I went to Oscoda Elementary, and for my 4th and 5th grade years. And for junior high, I went to Richardson Junior High School. That was right next to the Oscoda High School down River Road.
what were your passions back then? Were you involved in sports or music?
Oh
or
yeah, I was very active in sports. I was I was a three-lettered athlete, as a freshman, and all the way through, my passions were swimming, football, and track. I was a high hurdler in track, and ended up continuing on through college as a hurdler.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that. I'm a tall guy, and so I had a little bit of speed as well, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun. Hurdling and swimming were my real passions. I love football, I enjoyed it, but hurdling and swimming were my real passions. Yeah, sports were a big part of my life.
Well, that's a good area to like swimming in. You got some beautiful lakes up there and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of lakes. I'm blessed to have a place up there now that I can take my kids where I
Sure.
grew up. We have a little cottage up there. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
As you were going through school with all this stuff going on with your family and stuff, what were you thinking of as far as your own life was concerned? Things that you wanted to do?
When I was growing up,
Yeah.
well, before the divorce, I was going to be a photographer. My life was set. I did experience death at 6, though, and I lost my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, which was, I called him Grandpa.
Were you close?
Very. I was his favorite, hands down.
And did they live up by you?
They lived right next to us.
So
yeah.
you saw them a lot?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And when he died, I spent most of the visitation right next to his casket.
Mm-hmm.
And the local funeral director there asked if I would like to take a tour of the funeral home. And I was 6. And unbeknownst to me, he had already cleared it with my parents. Of course, he knew my parents very well,
Mm-hmm.
Being professionals in the community. And he took me on a tour of the funeral home, including the embalming room.
And how old were you at that time?
6 years old. Yeah. And from that moment, my family tells me that that's where I really gained my interest, because from that point I had this interest in it. And I kind of denied it when I was in high school. But then when I got out of, into college and was going to pursue a career in teaching and coaching, I finally, after 2 years of that, I said, no, I'm going to follow my passion and get into funeral service. And went to mortuary school in Tennessee.
Okay, so did you go there directly out of high school?
To mortuary school?
Yeah.
No, I went to Saginaw Valley State University.
Okay.
And that's where I went there because of a track scholarship, and I was going to be a teacher and a coach.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to get a bachelor's degree before going to mortuary school? I don't know.
No. Mortuary school, it differs per state. Here in Michigan, at Wayne State University, it's offered, and it is a bachelor degree, but it's not a requirement. Yeah, in several states, it's just an associate degree. Yeah.
What were your thoughts about exactly what you were going to do with that degree? Were you thinking about immediately having your own funeral home, or were you thinking about staying in the Oscoda area? What was going through your mind?
At that point, I was, I didn't want anything to do with embalming, oddly
Really?
enough. And here I am, kind of a guru of embalming. I wanted the suit and tie. I wanted the Cadillac. I was young, and all I was thinking about is, these guys, they're always dressed nice. They're driving nice cars. And that was really kind of what I was, hoping for, until I realized that funeral service is a 24/7, gig. It's there's no birthdays. What's Christmas?
Yeah.
Someone dies, you have to go. And so funeral service is very demanding.
Yeah.
And the average person don't really look at it that way.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you right there because we're out of time for this episode, but we're going to pick up on this during our second episode with Matt Smith. So please join us for part 2 of My Life with Matt Smith. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Connie Miller from Connie's Kitchen here at Treetop Lodge on OCTV, AT&T Channel 99, and Spectrum Channel 191. Join us every day, even weekends, here in the kitchen for all sorts of fun recipe ideas. And when I'm not in there doing that, I'm out here starting to get things ready for spring. So come up and join us at the lodge and watch us on OCTV. You will not be disappointed. Tons of great programming. Look at the breeze.